In the quiet town of Dark Valley, a series of unexplained disappearances begins to terrorize the residents. Entire families vanish without a trace, and panic spreads through the once peaceful streets. When the young detective Lucas Turner decides to investigate the case, he uncovers a web of secrets buried for generations, leading him to discover a network of underground tunnels harboring unimaginable horrors. The wind howled through the deserted streets of Dark Valley, carrying whispers of fear and despair. The small town, once known for its almost numbing tranquility, now found itself shrouded in a mantle of terror that suffocated its inhabitants. It all started on a moonless night, when the Smith family simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only an empty house and a half-eaten dinner. In the following days, other families disappeared without a trace. The Johnsons, the Browns, the Millers. There was no apparent pattern, no tangible clue. It was as if the darkness had come to life, swallowing entire people without distinction. The streets, once filled with laughter and conversation, now echoed only the oppressive silence of fear. Windows and doors closed at nightfall, and even during the day suspicious eyes followed every movement of strangers. The local police, unprepared to handle such an enigmatic case, seemed as lost as the missing themselves. It was in this growing paranoia that young detective Lucas Turner arrived in town. With his scrutinizing eyes and restless mind, Lucas felt there was something deeper behind these disappearances than simple isolated cases, something that smelled of ancient secrets and buried sins. As he walked through the worn cobblestone streets, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not by the frightened residents peeking through curtains, but by something else, something lurking in the shadows, in the unlit corners, perhaps even beneath his feet. Little did Lucas know that his arrival in Dark Valley marked the beginning of a journey that would lead him to the depths not only of the earth, but of the very nature of evil. A journey that would test not only his courage and intelligence, but his very sanity. As night fell over the town, bringing with it an almost palpable darkness, Lucas prepared to dive into a mystery that would reveal horrors beyond human comprehension. What would he find in the hidden secrets of Dark Valley? And more importantly, would he survive to tell the tale? The bus creaked and groaned as it entered the limits of Dark Valley, as if even the old vehicle felt the oppressive weight of the atmosphere hanging over the town. Lucas Turner, freshly graduated from the police academy, and with a burgeoning reputation for solving complex cases, observed the almost deserted streets through the foggy window. Upon disembarking in the central square, Lucas was immediately hit by a sensation of discomfort he couldn't explain. The air seemed thicker, laden with an indefinable smell, a mix of fear and long-buried secrets. His keen eyes caught details others might ignore, curtains subtly shifting as he passed, the echo of doors being locked, furtive and suspicious glances from the few passers-by. With a backpack on his shoulders and a folder of documents under his arm, Lucas headed to the local police station. The building, an old brick structure, seemed to sag under the weight of its own impotence in the face of recent events. Inside, the environment was chaotic. Phones rang incessantly, piles of papers accumulated on desks, and officers with deep circles under their eyes ran back and forth, seeming more lost than efficient. "Detective Turner?" A hoarse voice called out. It was Sheriff Ramirez, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a look that combined exhaustion and relief. "Thank God you're here. We're completely lost here." Lucas nodded, maintaining a neutral expression as he absorbed the environment. "Tell me everything, Sheriff. Don't omit any details, no matter how insignificant they may seem." The following hours were a whirlwind of information. Lucas listened to reports, examined photos, and studied maps of the town marked with the locations of the disappearances. The more he learned, the more he felt he was just scratching the surface of something much deeper and more sinister. As night fell, exhausted but determined, Lucas decided he needed to see for himself. Ignoring the sheriff's warnings about the danger of walking alone after dark, he set out into the streets of Dark Valley. The town at night was a completely different entity. The shadows seemed to move on their own, and the silence was so absolute that Lucas could hear his own heart beating. As he walked, an unsettling sensation of being watched accompanied him. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he initially thought it was his imagination. A distant moan, almost inaudible, coming from somewhere. Below him, Lucas stopped, trying to locate the source of the sound, his eyes fixed on a nearby manhole cover. For a moment he had the impression the cover moved slightly, as if something was pushing it from below. His heart raced. Instinctively, he took a step toward the manhole, his hand reaching for the flashlight in his pocket. But before he could investigate further, a sharp scream cut through the night, coming from a nearby house. Lucas found himself facing a choice: investigate the mysterious underground sound, or run toward the scream. Whatever his decision, he knew he was about to dive headfirst into the horrors that haunted Dark Valley, and something told him that once he began to unravel this mystery, there would be no turning back. The scream echoed again, sharp and desperate. Lucas, his heart pounding, chose to follow the sound. His footsteps echoed on the empty streets as he ran toward a two-story house on the corner of Oak Street. As he approached, he noticed the front door was ajar, swinging slightly in the night breeze. Lucas drew his weapon, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Police!" he shouted, cautiously pushing the door open. The interior of the house was shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the faint light of a television in the living room. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the constant ticking of a wall clock. Lucas advanced, his eyes alert to every detail. Then he heard it, a muffled sound coming from the basement. Without hesitation, he followed the stairs down. Each step creaked under his weight, as if the house itself protested his intrusion. In the basement, the darkness was almost total. Lucas turned on his flashlight, the beam revealing dusty shelves and old boxes. But something was wrong. The air here was different, humid, with an earthy odor that shouldn't be present in a common basement. Guided by his instinct, Lucas began to examine the walls. His fingers traced the cold bricks until, there, a barely noticeable protrusion. He pressed it, and with a sinister creak, an entire section of the wall moved, revealing a dark passage. The smell emanating from the opening was nauseating, a mix of wet earth, mold, and something else, something organic and putrid. Lucas hesitated for a moment, fear battling his curiosity and sense of duty. Taking a deep breath, he entered the passage. The tunnel was narrow and low, forcing him to crouch as he advanced. The walls were compacted earth, supported by wooden beams that occasionally groaned, as if protesting the weight of the town above. As he moved away from the entrance, Lucas felt the air growing denser, harder to breathe. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps and labored breathing. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. The light from his flashlight revealed something that made his blood run cold. Scratch marks on the walls, some still with traces of dried blood. Then he heard it, a distant whisper, almost inaudible, incomprehensible words in a language he didn't recognize. The sound seemed to come from deeper within the labyrinth of tunnels that stretched ahead. Lucas knew he should go back and call for reinforcements, but something compelled him to continue. It was as if the tunnels were calling him, inviting him to uncover their dark secrets. With his heart pounding in his chest and his hand firmly on his weapon, he advanced deeper into the bowels of the earth. Each step took him further from safety, closer to the horrors that awaited in the shadows. Little did Lucas know that his descent into the tunnels was just the beginning. The true terror that had haunted Dark Valley for generations was yet to come. And when he finally encountered it, nothing in his life or training could have prepared him for what he was about to discover. The air in the tunnels grew heavier with each step Lucas took. The darkness seemed to engulf him, and the beam of his flashlight barely penetrated the shadows ahead. Suddenly, his foot slipped on something wet. Lowering the light, his stomach churned. It was a viscous trail, like dark slime, snaking along the tunnel floor. Following the trail, Lucas arrived at a spacious chamber. The walls were covered in strange symbols etched into the rock. Some seemed as ancient as the earth itself, others more recent. In the center of the room, a stone altar stood, stained with a dark brown substance Lucas immediately recognized as dried blood. "My God," he murmured, his voice echoing off the damp walls. A sudden movement made him spin around, weapon at the ready. But it wasn't a threat, it was an old man, trembling and huddled in a corner. His eyes, when they met Lucas's, were filled with terror. You shouldn't be here," the old man whispered. "No one should." Lucas approached cautiously. "Who are you? What is this place?" The old man let out a bitter laugh. "I am Ezekiel, the last guardian, and this is the curse of Dark Valley." In the following minutes, Ezekiel unraveled a story that made Lucas's blood run cold. Dark Valley, the old man revealed, was no ordinary town. It was founded centuries ago by a group of occultists seeking power from the bowels of the earth. They dug these tunnels, Ezekiel continued, his voice trembling. They found something ancient, something hungry. The entity, the old man explained, demanded sacrifices. In return, it granted prosperity to the town above. For generations, the leaders of Dark Valley fed the creature in the depths, kidnapping unsuspecting travelers or selecting expendable citizens. But now, Ezekiel trembled. Now she is waking up. The sacrifices are no longer enough. She wants more, always more. Lucas felt the weight of the revelation crushing him. The recent disappearances, the terror gripping the town, it all made horrible sense now. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Ezekiel's eyes shone with a mix of fear and determination. "Because someone needs to stop this, and maybe you are our last hope." A distant scream echoed through the tunnels, making both men jump. Lucas realized with a shiver of horror that it wasn't a human scream. Ezekiel grabbed his arm, his eyes wide with fear. "She knows we're here. You need to go. Now." But before Lucas could react, the ground began to tremble. Stones fell from the ceiling, and a deafening roar filled the air. The darkness around them seemed to come to life, writhing and stretching towards them. Lucas knew he had to flee, but he also knew he couldn't let this horror continue. With his heart racing and his mind in turmoil, he had to make a decision: run to save his life, or delve deeper into the tunnels towards the heart of the darkness threatening to engulf Dark Valley. The fate of the town, and perhaps the world, hung in the balance. Lucas's survival instinct screamed at him to flee, but something deeper compelled him to move forward. With one last look at Ezekiel, he plunged deeper into the tunnels, leaving the old guardian behind. The corridors became increasingly narrow and winding. Lucas lost all sense of time and direction. His flashlight flickered, the battery weak and threatening to leave him in total darkness at any moment. The air grew denser, laden with a putrid odor that made his stomach churn. At some point, Lucas realized he was no longer alone. Whispers echoed off the walls. Sometimes so close he could swear he felt a fetid breath on his neck. Shadows danced on the edges of his vision, always dissipating when he tried to focus on them directly. Turning a corner, he faced a fork in the tunnel. Both paths looked identical, swallowed by darkness. Then he noticed words etched into the rock in an ancient language he couldn't decipher. Below them, a more recent and disturbing warning. "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." Lucas hesitated, fear threatening to paralyze him. Then he heard it, a distant cry, almost inaudible. It came from the tunnel on the right. Without thinking twice, he followed the sound. The corridor opened into a circular chamber. In the center, something made Lucas's blood run cold. A pile of bones and torn clothes, the remains of Dark Valley's missing. But there was no time to process the horror. A sudden movement caught his attention. In a dark corner, a figure crouched. It was a woman, her eyes wide with terror. "Help," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Please." Lucas ran towards her, but something made him stop. There was something wrong with the woman. Her skin seemed too pale, almost translucent. And her eyes, there was no life in them. Before he could react, the woman contorted, her body elongating impossibly. An inhuman scream escaped her mouth, which opened far beyond what any human jaw could allow. Lucas recoiled in horror, but it was too late. The creature lunged at him with supernatural speed. He felt sharp claws tearing into his arm, the acute pain making him stagger. Desperate, Lucas fired his weapon. The gunshot echoed deafeningly through the tunnels. The creature howled, a sound that mixed pain and primordial fury. Taking advantage of the distraction, Lucas ran. His lungs burned. His injured arm throbbed, but terror propelled him forward. Behind him, he could hear the sound of something dragging itself, relentlessly pursuing him. The tunnels became a confusing blur. Lucas turned corners randomly, desperate to evade his pursuer. At some point, he realized the sound behind him had ceased, but he didn't dare stop. Finally, exhausted and disoriented, he collapsed against a wall. His heart pounded in his chest, his labored breathing echoing in the oppressive silence. Then he noticed the tunnel ahead was different. The walls were no longer earth and rock, but a strange, almost organic material. They pulsed slightly, as if they were alive. Lucas knew he should turn back, try to find his way back to the surface, but something called to him, an irresistible force drawing him deeper. With trembling legs and a mind in turmoil, he stood up. Each step took him further from safety, closer to the heart of the darkness that lurked beneath Dark Valley. Whatever awaited him ahead, Lucas knew his life would never be the same. The true nature of the horror plaguing the town was about to be revealed, and he was the only hope of stopping it. With one last trembling sigh, Lucas advanced into the unknown, the shadows closing behind him, as if the very labyrinth was swallowing him whole. Lucas advanced through the pulsating corridor, each step echoing viscerally. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding in a nauseating rhythm. The air grew denser, filled with a metallic smell, reminiscent of old blood. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a colossal cavern. The ceiling was so high, it vanished into the darkness above. In the center, a lake of black, viscous liquid bubbled gently. The surface rippled as if something massive moved in the depths. Lucas felt it before he saw it, an ancient, malevolent presence that made every cell in his body scream in protest. His eyes, adjusting to the dim light, caught movement in the shadows. Then she revealed herself. Emerging from the dark waters, the creature defied any sane description. It was an amorphous mass of tentacles, eyes and mouths, constantly reconfiguring. Each movement revealed a new facet of horror. Human faces distorted, appeared and disappeared on its surface, silently screaming. The entity's voice reverberated, not in the air but directly in Lucas's mind. A cacophony of whispers and screams. "Welcome, little intruder. How long I have waited for a new toy." Lucas tried to scream, but the sound died in his throat. His body trembled, torn between the instinct to flee and a morbid attraction pulling him toward the creature. "You have uncovered so many secrets," the voice continued, now almost seductive. "So many mysteries unraveled, but you have seen nothing yet, child. Let me show you the true nature of the universe." A tentacle stretched toward Lucas, the tip opening like a grotesque flower. Inside he glimpsed chaotic images, ancient civilizations sacrificing innocents, dark rituals performed in hidden caverns, beings beyond human comprehension, lurking in the shadows between the stars. "I am older than your world," the entity whispered. "I am the hunger that never ceases, the nightmare that never ends. And now, you are mine." Lucas struggled to maintain his sanity. Part of him wanted to surrender, to dive into that abyss of forbidden knowledge, but a spark of humanity still burned in his chest. With superhuman effort, he raised his weapon. I won't let you continue," he stammered, his voice trembling. The creature emitted a sound that could have been a laugh or a growl. "Fool, do you think you can harm me with your primitive weapons? I am eternal. I am the void that existed before light." Tentacles lunged at Lucas, wrapping around his arms and legs. He felt his skin burn at their touch, as if being corroded by acid. The pain was unbearable, but something else terrified him more. He felt his mind being invaded, memories and thoughts devoured by the entity. In a final act of desperation, Lucas aimed his weapon, not at the creature, but at the stalactites above. The shot echoed deafeningly, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, with a thunderous crash, the ceiling began to collapse. Enormous rocks fell, some hitting the surface of the black lake, others crushing the creature's tentacles. The entity roared, a sound that shook the very earth. Its form writhed violently, tentacles lashing the air in fury. Lucas felt the grip loosen, and gathering his last strength, he lunged toward the tunnel's exit. Behind him, he could hear the chaos, rocks collapsing, the creature howling in agony and rage. As he ran, a terrible certainty gripped him. He might have wounded the creature, but he hadn't destroyed it, and now it was furious. The darkness swallowed him again as he plunged into the tunnels, the cavern collapsing behind him. Lucas knew the true battle was just beginning, and the fate of Dark Valley, perhaps the world, hung by a thread. Lucas ran through the collapsing tunnels, his lungs burning and muscles screaming in protest. The creature's roar and the crashing rocks echoed behind him, a chaotic symphony of destruction propelling him forward. He turned corners blindly, stumbling in the darkness. His flashlight had long since failed, leaving him guided only by instinct and desperation. The air grew denser with dust and debris, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly a flash of light ahead, an opening. With a final surge of energy, Lucas lunged toward the exit, emerging onto an empty street in Dark Valley, just as the tunnel behind him collapsed completely. He fell to his knees on the sidewalk, gasping and trembling. The night silence was surreal after the underground chaos, but it didn't last long. A tremor shook the ground, making windows rattle and car alarms go off. In the distance he heard the sound of breaking glass and people screaming. Dark Valley was waking up to a new nightmare. Lucas struggled to his feet, his eyes scanning the street. Then he noticed shadows moving unnaturally, sliding along the walls and gathering at the corners. The darkness was coming to life, as if the underground entity was spreading to the surface. With horror, Lucas realized the truth. By wounding the creature, he hadn't defeated it. He had only freed it from its underground prison. Staggering, he ran towards the police station. He needed to alert everyone, organize an evacuation. but turning a corner, he stopped abruptly. In front of him, in the middle of the street, stood Mayor Eugene Brooks, but something was terribly wrong. The man's eyes were completely black, and an inhuman smile distorted his features. "Oh, Detective Turner," the mayor's voice sounded, but they weren't his words. It was the entity's voice. "Did you really think you could stop me? I am the primordial darkness, the chaos that exists between the stars. And now, thanks to you, I am free to claim this world." Lucas recoiled in horror. Around them, more figures emerged from the shadows, residents of Dark Valley, all with the same black eyes and distorted smiles. "See," the creature continued through the mayor, "they are mine now. This entire town is mine, and soon the whole world will know my embrace." The revelation hit Lucas like a punch. In trying to save Dark Valley, he had condemned not just the town, but potentially all of humanity. The possessed figures advanced slowly, surrounding him. Lucas knew he couldn't fight them all. His mind raced desperately for a solution, a way to contain the evil he had unwittingly unleashed. Then he remembered the ancient inscriptions in the tunnels, the containment symbols. There might be a way to reverse this, to seal the entity again. But to do that, he needed to survive. And more importantly, he needed to find allies who hadn't been corrupted. With a quick move, Lucas drew his weapon and fired into the air. The sudden noise startled the possessed creatures, giving him an opening. He ran, zigzagging between them, towards the one person who might be able to help, Ezekiel, the old guardian. As he ran through the streets of Dark Valley, now a scene of Lovecraftian chaos and horror, Lucas knew he was racing against time. The fate of the world hung by a thread, and he was the only hope left. The night was far from over, and the true nightmare was just beginning. Lucas ran through the chaotic streets of Dark Valley, the sound of distorted footsteps and screams echoing behind him. The town, once peaceful, was now a scene of Lovecraftian nightmare. Finally, he spotted Ezekiel's house. Breaking down the door, he found the old guardian huddled in a corner, muttering ancient incantations. "Ezekiel," Lucas gasped, "we need to seal the entity again. Is there a way?" The old man's eyes widened. There is a ritual, but the cost is terrible." As Ezekiel explained, Lucas's face paled. The ritual required a voluntary sacrifice, a pure soul, to contain the darkness. "There is no other way," Ezekiel whispered. "One must die for many to live." The weight of the decision crushed Lucas. Sacrifice an innocent life or condemn the world. The morality that had always guided him now seemed a distant luxury. With time running out, they prepared the ritual. Lucas went out in search of the necessary sacrifice, his heart heavy with guilt over what he was about to do. In the central square, he found a young girl, unaffected, crying in fear. With gentle words and a merciful lie, he convinced her to follow him. Back at the house, the ritual began. Ezekiel chanted ancient hymns, while Lucas, tears in his eyes, prepared the sacrifice. At the crucial moment, however, Lucas couldn't go through with it. Looking at the terrified girl, he saw his own humanity reflected. "I can't," he murmured. "There must be another way." Then Ezekiel, with a sad smile, took the ritual dagger. "There has always been only one way, my boy." Before Lucas could react, Ezekiel plunged the dagger into his own chest. "Protect them," were his last words. A blinding light erupted from Ezekiel's body, and a supernatural wind swept through the town. Lucas felt the entity's presence retreating, screaming in fury as it was pulled back into the depths. When it was over, Dark Valley was silent. The possessed, now free, wandered confused through the streets. The darkness had receded, but at a terrible cost. Lucas knew the battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The entity was contained, but for how long? And how many other horrors awaited in the shadows, ready to be awakened? As the sun rose over Dark Valley, Lucas faced an uncertain future. He now carried the weight of forbidden knowledge and the responsibility to protect the world from threats few could comprehend. The nightmare had ended, but Lucas knew he would never sleep peacefully again. In the shadows of his mind, he could still hear the entities whisper, a sinister promise. I have waited millennia. I can wait longer. One day I will return, and next time not even your soul will be enough to stop me. Lucas watched the first rays of sunlight touch the streets of Dark Valley, a reminder that light always returns after darkness. But now he knew the longest night of his life was over, but the true darkness had only just begun. 6 months had passed since that fateful night in Dark Valley. To the untrained eye, the town seemed to have returned to normal. The once deserted streets now pulsed with life, and cautious smiles replaced the looks of terror. Lucas Turner, however, carried the weight of that night with every step. His once dark brown hair now showed grey streaks, a silent testament to the horrors he had witnessed. Sitting in his new office at the police station, Lucas flipped through reports. Officially, the case of the mass disappearances had been closed, a fabricated explanation. A criminal cult operating in the town's abandoned tunnels satisfied the authorities and the media. But Lucas knew the truth, and that truth consumed him. Every night he dreamed of the tunnels, of the living, pulsating darkness, of the entity's black eyes, and he always woke up with the same words echoing in his mind. I will return. On his desk, a map of Dark Valley was covered with annotations. Red circles marked locations where activity still persisted, shadows that moved in the wrong way, whispers no one else heard. The entity might be contained, but its echoes still reverberated. Lucas picked up the phone, dialing a number he knew by heart. After a few rings, a female voice answered. Dr. Oliveira, it's Lucas. We have another case. The town's psychiatrist had become his closest ally. Together they cared for the survivors, those who, like Lucas, carried the invisible scars of their encounter with the unknown. As he spoke on the phone, his eyes drifted to the window. For a moment, he could have sworn he saw a shadow move unnaturally in the glass's reflection. He blinked, and it was gone. Lucas sighed, running a hand over his tired face. He knew his fight was far from over. The entity was contained, but for how long? And how many other horrors awaited in the shadows, ready to be awakened? Hanging up the phone, he stood determined. Dark Valley might seem healed on the surface, but Lucas knew the wounds ran deep, and as long as there were shadows, as long as there were buried secrets, he would be there, an unyielding vigil. Because now he knew the true darkness wasn't in the tunnels beneath the town. It was in the hearts and minds of those who faced the unspeakable, and this darkness he would fight until his last breath. Grabbing his coat, Lucas stepped out into the streets of Dark Valley. The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky a blood red. The night approached, bringing with it the shadows. And in the shadows something waited, patient, eternal. But this time Lucas was ready. The saga of Lucas Turner and the horrors of Dark Valley is just the tip of the iceberg. In every town, under every seemingly quiet street, dark tunnels guard unimaginable secrets, ancient entities slumbering, waiting to be awakened. The mysteries hidden in the shadows are infinite, and not all have a happy ending. Stay vigilant, for the next tale by Draven Nocturnus will take you to new depths of terror, where nightmares come to life and sanity is tested to its limit. Prepare to dive into another abyss of psychological horror, where the line between reality and nightmare becomes thin, and the most terrifying monsters are not those lurking in the darkness, but those dwelling within us. Until the next night of terror, when we will once again explore the darkest corners of the human mind, and the hidden secrets that threaten to tear the fragile veil of reality. Good night, and beware of the shadows that move when you're not looking.